Pennsylvania and West Virginia and communities throughout Virginia. You've come, many of you traveled a great distance for this, and we thank you for that. To the families that are here, we thank you for your support and your sacrifice. There's a greatness in your generation. It's never left you. It never will. As a small token of our appreciation, I'd like to present you with the Vietnam Veteran Lapel Pin. This pin is part of the United States of America Vietnam War Commemoration Program authorized by public law in 2008. This event and recognition are sanctioned by the Secretary of Defense. So with the authority vested in this program, I'd like to formally present you, our honored veterans, with this lapel pin. So at this time, I'd like to ask our ROTC cadets, family members, and those that are here supporting the Vietnam veterans to take the lapel pins. You have lapel pins in front of you on your place setting.
If that figure doesn't have your attention, the fact that for the last 14 years, we as Vietnam veterans are dying at the rate of 390 a day.
In 1969. He served as a rifle platoon commander and infantry company commander with the 3rd Marine Division in the DMZ. Lieutenant Colonel Martin was also an air observer and forward air controller with the Marine Attack Helicopter and Reconnaissance Squadron, VMO-6, the most decorated squadron in Vietnam. He participated in 16 combat operations and flew 162 combat missions in low-level reconnaissance aircraft. Over 20 years commissioned service in the United States Marine Corps, he retired as a lieutenant colonel. Lieutenant Colonel Martin is also a retired Virginia public high school teacher and varsity track and field coach from the Manassas City Public School System. He has a Bachelor of Arts from Louisiana State University, a Master's of Education from George Mason University, and did postgraduate studies at the University of Virginia and Georgetown University. Lieutenant Colonel Martin is married to Sandra Martin and has 2 children, Justin and Virginia. His military decorations include the Silver Star Medal for Gallantry, the Purple Heart, the Air Medal, and Navy Commendation Medals with Lead Device for Heroism. Please welcome Lieutenant Colonel Jerry Martin.
Good morning. Thank you very much for allowing me a few moments to speak. And thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Tolman. Dean, thank you very much for your hospitality. But most of all, to your Vietnam veterans, thank you for taking the time to come this morning. If I could, I'd like to ask everyone who's a Vietnam veteran to raise their hand. I hope that at the end of the program today, that all of us have the opportunity to stop and meet each other. This is one of the few times that we can talk about being Vietnam veterans and feel comfortable doing so. But I'd also like all of the Vietnam veteran wives to raise their hands. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your tolerance. And thank you for your caregiving. I've been married 48 years to the same woman, which in her mind is probably her biggest accomplishment, because you are, in fact, that band of brothers that is becoming a very small figure. This is the remainder of my original platoon. I'm sitting there in the middle. And if you look at this, most of us realize that the platoons that we served with were reduced platoons as far as very often my platoon, and I'm sure your platoon, by today's standards, was no more than a reinforced squad. Regrettably, 3 of the people in that platoon, the remaining original platoon members of mine, are no longer here. And I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. So you can see how our country has grown in the last 50 years. 91%, as Lieutenant Colonel Tolman said, would probably volunteer to go. Unfortunately, none of us are as lean or as mean as we once were. And most of us, like myself, don't have to worry about personal items like combs or anything like that anymore. But yes, we all deep down inside, if you remember that very first picture I showed you, think of ourselves as that young warrior who is ready to go again. But the reality is, the young men and women today are much better trained, much better prepared, and much better educated than any of us were in our day. And God bless them for what they do. Because I think we all realize that we don't tell war stories to people unless those people know what we're talking about, and people who we know have had a similar experience. And it doesn't take long for any of us when some guy says, well, I can't talk about what I did because it was all classified and I had to kill you if I do. It doesn't take us long to realize that that fellow probably wasn't even there. And most of us kind of smile and say thank you and turn around and walk away. Let's debunk the stereotypes that we weren't a bunch of druggies, that we were people who couldn't get along, that we were people who couldn't hold a job, that we didn't care about our families. Most of us put our kids through college, and many of us had come from homes where we might have been the first college graduate, but yet we were damn sure our kids were going to be prepared. And we never forgot that.
I've never heard something like it before in my life over fight.
I'm not sure.
And he screaming, "Life is fire!"
You go on YouTube.
I said, "My God, you don't call a fire mission like that."
Not with 5-inch 54s.
So we were firing BT frags, 55 pounds.
So they were in the sand.
They were.
Or home counseling, or we met friends. In my case, I stayed in the military. And that was the best therapy and counseling for me because I could sit with guys who I had served with or guys who had had similar experiences